Hello and welcome to the David Divine broadcasted on another Thursday night. Tonight we are joined with Michael Hadsell from Peace River K-9 Search and Rescue. And you can also find Michael at prsar.org and at Peace River K9 here on YouTube. Michael, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it.
We had a really interesting talk backstage, so I'm hoping that the people will enjoy the viewers now and in the future what you have to offer. A lot of good stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do on your YouTube channel and also at prsar.org, and the links are in the description.
We are a nonprofit 501c3 Florida corporation incorporated search and rescue group that's been established, and we started in 2005, and then we incorporated in 2010 because we want to start raising money and to get the nonprofit status. So we've been at it for now 18 years, and we've got, I don't know, it's been quite an adventure, all the different things that we've done over the years. Started off just with dogs. I was a dog trainer, been in dogs for 42 years, training dogs, and then there was a need at the time here in Southwest Florida for some really good tracking dogs back around 2010, 2011, and the success rate of tracking dogs at that time was about 17%. So that meant you had an 83% chance of not getting found. There was a dog looking for you. And we set out to try to change that. And we've been good. Our success rate with our tracking dogs runs somewhere around 86, 87%. So we're pretty good with what we do. And so we continued to build the team up, and then in 2013 we added the drone unit. We were the first team in the United States to have a drone team out working. That we used fixed wing drones at that time. And then we added the horse team in 2015, I think it was. And our horses are mounted. It's a mounted horse team like you would see in most standard teams, but ours are also scent trained, meaning they do the same work that the dogs do. And they're using their nose to find a target odor. And that is, they're trained on 2 target odors, which is live humans and then human remains, which is cadaver work. So they can do both. And so that's our horse team. We have a dive team that's an incredibly well-trained dive team, and a water team that works on the water, because we do a lot of work on the water for recovery. And that seems to be where we end up on a lot of these cases. So 18 years of doing this, 42 years experience. I've got well over 300 missions just with my dog Dama here, and I can't tell you what the body count is, on the recoveries, but I don't keep track of it. I've gotten to that point. Have you ever watched the movie The Guardian with Kevin Costner, and they asked him, the kid's always asking, well, what's your count, and right. he says what was it, 12 or something, and well, that's not so, whatever it is. He says those are the ones I didn't find. And I find at this point in my career, I'm 65 now and I'm getting older, that the only cases I ever think about are the ones that we didn't find. And I often think about them and, did we do a job? Did we miss something? Should we go back and search this other area? Those are the cases that kind of haunt you. So those are the ones I take care of. When we find somebody, if we find a live find, like we find the autistic child or the Alzheimer's patient, that's just another day at the job for us. But it's the ones you don't find that stick with you, So.
Wow. Yeah, that's deep, and that's something to think about for a second. That just hit me when you said that. Yeah, I think that I know backstage we were talking about how people are in a hurry to turn information over before even the family might know or something like that. But that's one thing I never thought about, but also that the ones you don't find, that is, that's got to be hard to.
It was quiet. I mean, we were quietly working in the background for years, and then search has always been a difficult thing. It's people don't understand how search works. from the law enforcement perspective. You know, you have a loved one that's gone missing, you have a daughter, spouse, someone's gone missing, and it's not a suicide, and it's not drug related, and it's not, they just suddenly were abducted and they're missing. So who took them? Were they taken by a bad guy, or did space aliens grab them, or Bigfoot got them, or what happened here?
Who? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so the cops hit it hard for about 72 hours, and they're going to call in groups like us to come in and assist, because we have unique resources with the dogs and the horses and stuff, and we're going to help them clear areas and search everything that we can search, to try to help them. And then at the end of 72 hours, they're going to say, well, we don't have any more clues. We can't justify spending any more money, and we've done our due diligence, so the search just shuts down. And at that point, if we don't find them, the person who's still missing their loved one just kind of is like, well, too bad. And that's where things just kind of end. And of course, the cops will still be there, and they're going to run leads and do what they can to try to, in the background, monitor bank accounts, credit cards, phone records, if they can get them, and see if there's any activity, and tax records too. We had a case that resolved here fairly recently because the person turned out to still be alive because they filed their tax return.
Oh,
Another location. And we're like, oh, guess he's okay.
Yeah. Maybe they won't catch me turning in my taxes. Maybe they won't notice.
Yeah.
I mean, what are they thinking?
So, you think if you go missing, probably the last thing you want to do is turn your, because some people go missing on purpose. They just want to check out of their lives, and they just want to go start over somewhere else. And I see moms do it. I see dads do it. I see, people just it happens. And of course, the parents can't believe it. They're always like, oh, my child would never do anything like that.
Right.
You're like, yeah, right. Okay, thanks. But they do. And
desperation, out of desperation, or just, who knows?
There's so much we don't know about each other, and really what's going on in our heads and stuff. We think we know this person, but we really don't know the person, and
right.
So that's just one of those things that you try to qualify what you're doing. I see Mike Jones here's got an interesting comment. He says, hate to hear resources wasted on a false search. And that's true. That happens a lot. And we try to qualify our search as best we can to do it, because the bottom line with search is that it costs money. And it's the ugly thing, the ugly person in the room that nobody wants to talk about. But the fact is, in search, law enforcement is out there working. Those guys are getting paid overtime, maybe hazard pay. It's costing the department anywhere from $60 to $100 an hour per deputy out there to be doing that search. And we're free. It doesn't cost us, that we don't charge for our time that we're out there doing it, but it costs us money to get there. Most of the time we pay for that out of our pocket, or if it's a long way away, if we have funds in the bank, we'll reimburse gas for the teams that go up there if we can, especially with the horse team. The horse team, we always have to reimburse them wherever they go, because they're pulling a trailer and they're, their gas guzzling big Ford truck is getting, 9 gallons to the mile. So,
6 miles a gallon. Yeah. Bringing the big horses out.
Yeah. So it
costs
money to run them.
Mike also asks, what are things people can do to help support what you do?
Well, donations is great, and that's kind of where we are with it. We always say we're powered by the community, so the more funds we have, the more we can do. And so we're always, we're doing fundraisers and donations and stuff. They can go to the website if they want to and donate there. I'll plug it here, just
absolutely.
Got to that point. But there's a donations tab, and you can go in there, and there's several different methods. Whatever you're comfortable with donating through that method, then please feel free to do so, and keeps us going, so that we can keep the teams out there and keep trying to help these families. We end up doing a lot of private searches, and there's 2 different types of searches that you get in the search and rescue business. You have the law enforcement search, which is under what we call the authority having jurisdiction, or the ODJ as they call it, and those are usually the searches that are run by law enforcement. And then the other side of that is the family search. And both of it, both us and law enforcement are working for the same reason, and that's to find that family missing person. And so the family is our customer on the long end of it. That's the person that we're trying to help. So sometimes law enforcement shuts down, the family calls us and they say, we need help. Can you guys help us out? And so I'll go call the detective in charge of the case and say, hey, the family needs some help searching these areas. Do you mind if we go help them? And they're like, no, go right ahead. Now you have to be trained in the legal system to understand the chain of evidence and what your abilities are, how far can you push, how far in your investigation can you go, because if you go too far, you could screw the case up. And if this is a criminal case and you screwed it up, the state attorney's not going to take it. He's just going to walk away from it, say, this is a loser, I am not going to put this thing in court, and the bad guy walks away. So there comes a point with the families many times when I'm working with them where I have what I call that come to Jesus meeting, and I'm like, look, if you just want your daughter back, I'll get her, and I'll bring her home. But if you want the bad guy, we're going to have to do it differently, okay? Because there's a criminal case here, and we've got to make sure that we protect that case so that you can prosecute them down the road, And
right, yeah,
so a lot of times families don't
Yeah.
understand that. They just want their person back and they want the guy, but they don't care how you get him back. And I'm like, you got to be careful. We go charging into some of these areas where there's obviously a murder, foul plays involved, and there's obvious evidence around. We just can't go in there and muck the whole crime scene up. There are organizations that I've seen and even seen them do it that have gone into crime scenes and destroyed the crime scenes when they went in there. And we've tried to stop them and say, hey, wait, guys, hey, what are you doing here? And they'll still go ahead and say, well, we're gonna solve this case. I'm like, no, you're not, because the sheriff's department is going to have a fit when they find out what's going on here. And so you have to walk away from it. You have to walk away from the case.
Do you have? Oh, you're welcome, OKC. Do you have to have a license? Is there something? Is there an entity governing over what you guys do, or you can go in before the police or look around where the police? Is there some sort of certificate you have to have that gives you access?
It goes state by state. Now we're based in Florida, and Florida doesn't have a SAR council or any oversight for search and rescue teams. So Pennsylvania does, California does, Oregon does, Washington does. I think Minnesota does and Maine does. And those are states that if we get called to go in there and assist, we have to get permission before we go in there because there's a SAR council involved, so we have to be careful with that. I think Virginia is the other one. And but see, I'm a private citizen as well as a guy who does search work. So I can, as a private citizen, I can pretty much go anywhere I want still. I mean, they haven't taken that freedom away from us yet. They're working on it. But
Right.
It's a scary,
don't
the
bring up
justice system is very scary.
Yeah, don't suggest that they might do that.
But I can always go in. Now, there's a fine line in what we do as opposed to what we do to where a private investigator would work. Okay, so we have to watch that. The only thing we really have to watch is, are we operating as a search group or are we operating as an investigative group, like a private investigator? If we cross that line, then we can get into trouble for being unlicensed private investigators, right? So you have to watch that line when you're out there doing this stuff. But as searchers, as volunteers going in just to help the family, generally we can pretty much do whatever we want and just try to protect what we do. Now, one of the things that we at Peace River, because we're very well trained, we know how far in a case we can go. We know a crime scene when we see it. Our people will protect the scene. We're very highly trained in forensics, so we understand what's going on, and we can keep ourselves from getting into trouble or destroy the scene so the case doesn't go on. Now, we try to work with the law enforcement agency that has authority while we're there. And they know we're there. They know we're in the area. They know where we're working. They're welcome to come with us. If they're going out there with us, they're welcome to come along. Some do, some don't. But at least we're trying to work hand in hand with the law enforcement agency at the time so that we don't, so that we can, get this case resolved the best way that we can.
Right. Wow. Okay. I'm trying to keep up with the questions here. I know, I can't remember who asked. They asked if you had a case ever in Amish country.
Amish?
which
No.
I've seen twice in chat, so that's why I'm asking.
um, that's funny. Um,
Oh,
I
and that
personally
I think that
have
was the
not.
other part of it. Did they have special rules or thoughts that you had to follow?
Um, Not in the Amish. Now, we work a lot with the Indian nations, and we do a lot of work for them. And unfortunately, because they have very little resources in their law enforcement, their people are victimized quite a bit. And so they have a lot of missing person cases, and so we'll get called to go help. We do historical work as well. We did some historical work for the Shoshones at one time, locating some old ancient Indian mounds and stuff. And they have some sacred areas in their reservation that, white folk like me or round eyes are just not allowed to go in there. And we were actually allowed to go in there to search with them. So I've actually been privileged to see parts of America that nobody really ever gets to see, which is kind of cool. And it is spectacularly beautiful, but it was quite a privilege to be able to do that. So we do a lot of historical work. We were up working in Georgia recently, recovering some old Seminole War graves recently, helping the archaeologists up there locate these areas. And so that's another aspect of Peace River that we do away from just the missing persons cases. But
And that was done with dogs in
dogs,
Georgia?
yeah, we use dogs. We use ground penetrating radar. We have a few other tricks that we use, science tricks. We have what we call the FAST team, which is led by Dr. Vass, who was one of the directors of the Body Farm in Oak Ridge, Tennessee for years. And he trained us up so that we can work with what's called forensic applied science and technology. It's FAST, and that's what we call the FAST team. And we use a lot of different techniques to locate clandestine graves. Now, clandestine graves is the most difficult search that we do. It's hard to find these graves out there, especially when they've aged quite a bit, because as they age and as the body decomposes, everything goes into the soil and it starts moving around. So it makes it very hard for the dog to pinpoint the odor plume for what we call the grave shaft or target zero, which is the grave shaft. And the dogs will start alerting 25, 50 yards. We've had dogs up to a half a mile from the grave shaft start alerting because the water table's high and it's moved the remains through the soil. If you've got a real sandy soil and a high water table, it just moves the odor right over, and the dogs will start alerting way over. And you got to work your way back, and it takes time. When you get into those situations, it could take a couple of weeks trying to figure out exactly where the grave shaft is, and so it's tough. It's tough work, but I enjoy it. I get it. It's something I enjoy doing. I see someone here, female dogs get fixed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I will say they eventually do, but we generally don't fix the females. We don't fix the males either when they're doing SAR work, because there's a hormone loss. And with the hormone loss, they lose muscle tone. And when they lose muscle tone, they're prone to more injuries. And so we try not to do that. Now my dog, Dama, who's my primary dog, and I use female dogs for my work more than males. Female dogs are easier to live with. They do great work, and they have better noses than the boys do. So sorry, guys, but that's just the way it is.
Oh, is that true?
That's true.
Really? Yeah.
Just try it if you've ever been married and have a baby around the house. The wife can smell if that diaper's bad three rooms away. Now the guys will never pick it up, but the girls will know right away. But the same thing with the female dogs. They're very good at picking up odor. And
so scientifically, that's a fact, huh? They have a better sense.
They just seem to work better at it. Seem to be more sensitive. So I think it's more like selective. I always joke around and I say it's like selective smelling. It's like guys, we have selective hearing.
Right? Yeah.
We hear the things we want to hear and we ignore the things we don't want to hear.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the way it is. Boy dogs are tougher. They're great for patrol work. I use shepherds. I prefer German shepherds. It's not because they're the super brand of dog or whatever breed. But it's just a preference that I have, you know. And I grew up. I'm going to date myself here, but there was an old show I used to love when I was a kid called Sky King. I used to watch that show all the time, and he had his twin Cessna flying around with his faithful German Shepherd, you know, and everything. I said, I want to be that guy. That's the guy I want to be.
Right. And
And
look at
eventually I
you.
did get the twin Cessna and I did get the German
Oh,
Shepherd,
look at
you
you.
know,
Look at
so I
you.
finally got to my Sky King moment. And
Achieving the little guy's goals.
yeah,
You as
so
little guy. That's awesome. That's awesome. You still have the Cessna? You still fly?
no, the problem with the old Cessna twins is they're getting old and it's getting harder and harder to get parts for them. And the annuals get very expensive. And to keep them flying, the maintenance is just getting too expensive. So I finally said that's enough, and I sold it off. I still have my pilot's license. I still like to fly. I do use a 107 drone pilot, so I do a lot of drone flying. But I don't have my own Cessna twin anymore. That went away.
That's awesome. And you guys started the drone flying right away. You said
We were one of the
in
first ones to
13.
do it as an
Yeah.
organized. It was funny because I went up to. They had what they call an FPV demonstration up in Leesburg, Florida, with FPV as first pilot view, and that's where you're looking through the goggles with the little camera on the fixed wing plane
Yeah.
and flying it. They're flying it, and you're watching through the camera. And I was just amazed at that. And I said, this is made for search and rescue. This is made for what we do, you know, because so many times we want to be able to get air assets in the air and, you know, helicopters and whatever. We can't get them. The helicopter's broke, or they don't have a pilot, or they don't have the money, or there's no, you know, something like that. We can't get it. I said, this is cheap and easy, and we can get one of these things up here.
Yeah.
And so we started putting a lot of time into it. One of the first teams to ever do that. And we got very, very far with it. Our drone program now is really good. I mean, I'm very proud of our drone program.
Yeah, I mean that had to really expand your job. I mean, that had to just open up so many more avenues.
Yeah, we do
Then
a lot of support now, like for forestry and for when they're having big forest fires and stuff. We go out and identify the hot zones with the infrared, and we tell them where the head fires are, and we can tell them which direction everything's moving, and, you know, we can do all that for them. And then the same thing with the fire department. We help them with some of their burns that they get into, and then law enforcement, they've got their own drones now, so they pretty much do what they want to do with that. So but for a while there, with missing person cases, we were helping a lot with that on the initial live find searches. We still do. We have drones that do some pretty incredible work now with our infrared and near infrared, and with the image recognition software that we've been working with. We can, you know, if there's a skeletal remains out in an open field, our drones will pick it up, you know, pretty quick. So it really helps us shorten down the search areas. So, you know,
yeah.
we're not having to clear miles and miles of area. We can get down and locate hot areas really fast and get in there and get it done. You know?
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. They had to open it up big time. Van Life is mentioning his dog is a Texas Healer, which is an Australian
Yeah.
Shepherd and Australian cattle dog, and that kind of leads into German Shepherds, which your preference. I was gonna ask that for Van Life. Would that be a good dog? His dog right there.
Yeah, I mean, we have everything on our team. We have Chihuahuas to Bloodhounds to, you know, we've had Cane Corsos, we've had, you know, I don't like the short-nosed dogs like the Corsos and the Boxers and the Pit Bulls, not because of aggression or mean issues. I'd love to own a Pit Bull. I like them, you know. However, they don't cool well. That short nose that they have tends to make them overheat quickly. Rottweilers have the same problem. So, you know, the longer the snout, the better the cooling system for the dog. And when you're working in Florida and you're working in some of these areas, that your dog will just pass out, you know, in the field, and you don't want to heat stroke your dog, so they're just like people. I've been heat stroked once and heat exhausted about, I don't know, a dozen times. I ended up in the hospital on my last heat stroke, and the doctor said, you do it again, you're dead, because you won't come back from it, so don't do it anymore. So I'm very careful about going out in the heat these days.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's a pretty big consequence. Blue Line Bigfoot, good to see you. Blue Line Bigfoot says childhood dream. I'm guessing the Cessna pilot, maybe.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Mike Jones again says, has there been any hope of state funding, even partially, could help?
We're still working on trying to get some grants available for what we call bona fide teams, and that means teams that have established themselves, that have some kind of accreditation. And we're very well known in the state of Florida. We're one of the number one backup teams. So in a disaster like we had, like I lived through Hurricane Ian. I lost my home, and we had a terrible disaster here, which was awful. Now it's a little over a year since it happened. We're back in the house. We're doing well, but it was quite the thing. But even after, when I was home going through the storm, me and the dogs, we had 15 feet of storm surge and 200-mile-an-hour winds. And my roof was going, and I had water in the living room. And the dogs are up on the couch, and they're looking at me like, well, are we going to abandon ship or what? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do here, because it's until the wind dies down. And
so you were just waiting, that you weren't evacuating, you were just waiting the storm out?
No, we waited it out. We were on, I'm part of the response for the area, the emergency response. So we just waited for the storm to pass. We figured we'd be, we're gonna be okay. Floridians were like, we'll take on hurricanes. We don't care, But boy, the temperature drops below 70 degrees, and we're all freezing to death. When there's a Cat 5 hurricane out there, we're going,
you're just like us up north with snow. We think we can drive through it, and then everybody's in the ditch, right? The first snowfall. So that was that the first time you had that much damage to your house?
Well, I went through Charlie, which I didn't have any damage to my house, and then we had Irma came through, and I lost a couple shingles, and that was about it. We put them back up. That wasn't a big deal. But Ian was a devastator, and the problem with Ian was it didn't move. It just stayed here. And usually they go through very quickly. Like Charlie, when it came through, it blew through fast, and so we didn't get a lot of damage. It was really breezy for quite a while, and then all of a sudden it just was over. Ian was like my first time of seeing a hurricane that had done this was Hurricane Dorian, and that hit the Bahamas, and that sat over the Bahamas for 24 hours and 200-mile-an-hour winds, plus just destroying the islands. Abaco and Grand Bahamas and the other ones just destroyed those islands. And then it finally moved off. Now that hurricane was scheduled to come here to Punta Gorda in our area here, but because the cold front got there early, it held it over the Bahamas instead of allowing it to come onto Florida. And so Ian was kind of like the hurricane we were promised with Dorian that didn't make it. Showed up. It's like, we owe you a hurricane. Here it comes.
So you got it whenever, a year later or whenever.
But we were on the recovery teams that went into the Bahamas, and so we worked there for 3 weeks, pulling bodies out of the rubble there for 3 weeks. And so that was my first big wake up call for storm surge, because people always think of hurricanes as wind, but really what kills you is the storm surge. It's the water that comes in afterwards. Like the Bahamas was under 23, 24 feet of water, the entire island for 24 hours. And as we were driving along, going from one town to the next, we would see these pine trees with these marks way up in the tree. And I would ask the law enforcement officer that I was with, I said, what is those marks from? And he said, that's the debris line. That's where the water was, and everything was scraping against the trees up there. And I was like, holy crap.
Wow.
So it's the water that gets you.
Yeah.
afterwards. So we had the double whammy here with Ian. We had the winds, and then we got the water afterwards. So my house is at 13 feet above sea level. We had 15 feet of water, and so I only had about 2 feet I had to deal with here. But there are other houses on my street that were down much lower. And so after the storm passed, I got the jet ski out. I had a team equipment here at my house, so I got the jet ski out, and I had the our inflatable boat in the water. And we were going door to door, checking on everybody that was still here, making sure that they were okay and what they needed, and did the best we could to take care of them. We had one couple where the lady who had a heart attack, and we had to work her really fast, and then we had to get her up to the main road on the jet ski, and then we were able to get the Army helicopter to come in and take her out and fly her out. And then we had another couple that had all three people living in the house, the grandma, the mom, and the daughter, all had needed inhalers, and their inhalers weren't working because there's no electricity, and they didn't think to have the cans and the other stuff. So I ended up coming back, taking one of my drone batteries. It's a 12-volt battery, and I reworked it and put a USB port on it so they could hook their inhalers up so they could keep going. Because the grandmother had already passed out because she couldn't breathe anymore. And
Wow.
so we were trying to get them back up, which we did. We got them going, and then eventually, about 48 hours later, we were actually able to go up and get them some stuff and be able to take care of them. But so it was interesting, and going through it. So that's the other part of Peace River. We work on the disaster response side, and so we had to be here for that, and we'll always be here as long as there's a Peace River. We'll always be here to help. After the storm passes, we go out and we start seeing what we can do to help. So.
Wow, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing work that you do. When do they call it hurricane season? Is it now? Right now? Is it
It's
hurricane season?
I think it goes to the first week of November, I think. So, well,
Okay,
no,
so
I mean the end of it's almost over. I think we're just about to the end of it. I think it's not over yet. We've got 2 hurricanes trying to stir up right now down around Cuba. So we're
yeah,
watching them right now, although they don't have any chance of coming up here because this cold front that's coming through, a cool
right.
front for us, but a cold front. Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah,
God,
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
68
yeah.
degrees
Yeah,
outside.
it's down to
Oh.
70. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Poor guy. No, I mean, obviously for the storms, right? That makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
to keep track of that stuff. But yeah, we don't feel sorry for you at 70, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
Especially
Well,
this time of year. You were telling me earlier, now you have dogs, you have several dogs, but is that your main one is
Dama's my main dog, and then I have Dutch as my other. It's actually Dama's brother. And Dutch was actually supposed to be my dog. This litter that the breeder had, she have a breeder up in Gainesville that breeds black German Shepherds for law enforcement and for working dogs. Now, if you're going to get a good dog that works, you have to go to working dog kennels. Even in German Shepherds, there's the AKC line, which is what we call show line dogs, and they're very pretty and they make good pets and they're good paperweights, but they don't make good working dogs. And so if you want
good.
to get a working dog, you go to a working line breeder. That's where your law enforcement dogs come from and all that stuff. And it's the same thing for golden retrievers or Labradors or whatever. If you want, they have the gun dog lines, which are the hunting labs, and then they have the pet labs, which are the ones that you see at the dog shows. They're 2 different things.
Right.
And so Dutch was in this really good litter that came out, and I was supposed to get him as a male dog, and I wanted him to do SAR, but also to do some sport work with him. And I didn't get him because the guy who had donated the stud decided he wanted him, and he took him, so I didn't have a dog.
Oh,
And so I was out on that litter, and that happens. You just get bumped out. And so Dama came back, and she was a little bit goofy, and the people didn't want her. And so she said, "Come up here and look at this dog, and I think it's okay. I think you'll be able to work with this dog." So I went up and I looked at her, and went up with a friend of mine, and we looked at the dog and tested her, and she had everything I wanted: a lot of drive, a lot of reward. So I took her. And it's the D litter. They always alphabetize the litters A, B, C, and D. Well, she's out of the D litter. So everybody gives their dog a D name when they take them
Uh,
out of the de-litter, right? And
okay.
I brought her home, and I couldn't give her a name. I just couldn't come up with a name. And she was getting into the trash, and she was tearing up the furniture, and she was doing all the things that puppies do. And I would say, "Damn it, cut this out! Damn it, cut it out!" You know. And I was yelling, cussing at her. Well, she started to think her name was "Damn it" after a while.
Yeah,
And
damn
I
it.
thought, well, it's a D word, you know. Maybe we'll just leave it.
Yeah. Come here, damn it. Come here, damn it.
And
Yeah,
just
it works.
leave it as
Come here,
damn
damn it.
it, you know.
Yeah.
And the team said there's no way you're going to have a dog on the team with the name damn it. That's just not going to work. So
Just
we
ri
changed it over to Dama, and after Damaris, it's a biblical name. And I said, well, we'll name her Dama instead. So we did that, and I can still call her damn it, and she'll still come.
She
But
will.
yeah,
She'll come to damn it. Yeah. She
but
remembers. She's smart.
yeah. So Dutch ended up not working out. He bit some of the grandkids or something wherever
Oh,
he was at, and he became incredibly aggressive. And they gave him back they were going to put him down, but then the breeder interceded, took him back there. And she called me and says, "Do you still want this dog? He's here." And I said, "Well, I'll come." Took him up to rehab him and see if we could find him another home. And I worked a lot with dogs like that, especially military dogs. I was one of the few that was taken in military dogs years ago, and we were rehabilitating them so they could go into other, civilian life. A lot of these dogs are very messed up, and it took a while to rehab them. But so I thought, well, I'll take on Dutch and see if I can work for him. And his name was Django. Django, I guess that's how you say it. Begins with a
oh,
D.
did Django. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I didn't like the name. I was like, I don't like that name. So I just called him Dutch, and so we
Call
worked with
him
him,
call
and
him damn it too, huh?
yeah, he was
But
he's a tough dog. I mean, the first day I brought him home, I put him in his crate to feed him. I put his bowl in there, and as
yeah.
soon as I let go of the bowl, he bit me right in the hand, put two punctures in my hand,
Yikes.
and I was like, okay, well, we're gonna have an interesting relationship here, you know. So we took it just took time to build him up, and he was just had been mishandled so much that he had no trust for people anymore, and he just
Yeah.
wanted to be left alone mostly. But he was really, I could feel that there was a really good soul in this dog, and I knew that he was okay. We just had to get through the crap.
Right.
And so I put a lot of time in with him, and got him rehabbed, and he was stable, and he was friendly again, and we could take him anywhere, and he was about 90% sure that he wasn't going to kill anybody. And because he's a 100-pound dog, I mean, if he just
Yeah.
and all muscle, if he decides he's going to do something, he's going to do it,
Yeah. Yeah.
And but he was very stable. And so this one family was supposed to take him, they didn't want him, and then this other family, they didn't want him. So I was talking to my wife about it, and I said, yeah, it's a shame, everyone's kind of scared of him. And she looks at me and says, well, I like him, let's just keep him. And I about fell out of my chair. And I was like, okay. So we kept him, and he's been a great addition to the family. So he's been doing really well ever
Well,
since.
that's a wild turn of events, and that's Dorma's brother then, right?
Yeah. So they're
Yeah.
brother and sister. Yeah. So she's been fixed. Dama had that cancer that they get in their uh, breasts that females get, and apparently it's from some kind of hormone overload, I guess. And so she had to be fixed last year, along with getting all those tumors removed. And so she's recovered, and she's doing very well. Dutch got famous he had his 15 minutes of fame. He got attacked by an alligator and made the newspaper.
Oh,
And
did he really?
yeah, he had over 100 stitches on his one side. And
Jeez.
that gator latched in right over here and got him on this arm and right in here. And he just reached around and grabbed him by the gut and flung that 4-foot gator right off of him.
Wow. Wow.
and
Did, did
and then
he
he was
do
just
that?
bleeding something terribly. And I was trying to plug all the leaks, but he was fighting with me. He's biting me because he didn't want me messing with him. And I'm trying to I had to hold him down and put a muzzle on him, and then try to plug all the holes in him.
Yeah.
But
Did that happen in a work atmosphere or just?
yeah, he was
Oh,
shoreline search, and just popped right out of the gator, popped right out of the canal, got him.
oh
So
my gosh.
yeah, so we're really good about searching these areas before we always go in and recon before we do anything, and we check for gators and stuff. We hadn't seen any gator activity at all in this area, so we didn't. He must have been laying on the bottom, and we just never saw him. So,
wow.
And so, can I claim vet bills on taxes? I can. So I see that question there. I think it's from Gnome there.
Yeah, no,
Because he's a service dog, and we're using in the furtherance of a service. I get to take his vet bill off. So yeah, we did. It was by the way, it was about a $3,500 vet bill. So by the time it was all over with, but they were not cheap.
that's a wild hazard that you don't think about when you're doing the search
Yeah,
things.
Florida's tough. We have pythons, we have wild pigs, we have bears, we have coy wolves now. These are coyote wolf mixes. We have, I tell people searching in Florida is like searching in Jurassic Park. Everything's trying to kill you. We have massive spiders, we have fire ants that'll chew you all up, we have snakes of every kind, cottonmouths, rattlesnakes. Everything's out there, and they're all trying to kill you, and you're trying to search through these wildernesses looking for stuff.
Yeah.
And, there's days I'm out there, I'm going, why am I doing this again? I can't remember. What am I doing here? I can't remember what I'm doing here. Anyway, it's like, oh my gosh. So
yeah, that's definitely a job hazard. It's something you don't think about. On top of it being hard in remote locations anyway, now everything's trying to get you while you're trying to do your work. Huh?
I have my friends who come in from out west. They were out there. Oh, we work at Teton National Forest. And if you've ever been there, it's gorgeous. They have these beautiful big trees, big open areas. They don't have Florida. It's swamp. It's palmetto bushes. It's vines. They all have thorns, and they all trying to tear you up. It's just like, it's really tough. It's tough. It's tough work down here.
You don't work for the Florida Bureau of Visitation or Visitors Bureau.
No.
It's not all beaches, I guess.
Yeah.
If you get off the beach, forget it.
Yeah, the beaches are great. They're beautiful here, but don't get in the woods. Between the ticks and the snakes, you're going to have an interesting day. That's for sure.
Oh, that for all you retirees out there, there's something to think about.
Stay at the mobile home park. Don't go wandering too far.
Don't go out in the jungles.
So you can go out on golf courses. Still run into pythons and alligators on the golf courses here. So
yeah, absolutely. I've seen them. Yeah, sitting there chasing the golfers around. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that's definitely an added hazard to golf. Although I think I kind of like that. I like that on the golf course. I like that.
Now, Mike Jones is asking about anacondas in Florida. We have not seen any yet. We have pythons. We just recently helped terminate a 14-foot python that was here. That was not far from where I live, and the rule now they're trying to find the nests, and that's one of the things they've asked me about. Can we train dogs to find the eggs? So we experimented with 2 dogs, and they had some success. One of our dogs ended up on a TV show, and then we had because the nest can have up to 100 or more eggs in it, and if they all hatch, you've got 100 pythons now that are free in the woods, and so it's that's why we're trying to deal with them so quickly, because they multiply so fast, and they're just all of a sudden you've got an infestation of pythons there, and so it's really trying to find the nests and get rid of them that way. Unfortunately, I'm not a big, used to do a lot of hunting when I was younger. As I've gotten older, and having the respect I have for animals now, I just don't feel like hunting.
No, yeah, I understand that. Yeah,
I just kind of like, I can't do it. I call it my deer hunter moment. I think it was about 15 years ago. I was hunting up in Georgia with my in-laws, and I had my 7mm with me, and a beautiful buck came through with 2 does, and I had them all lined up, and I was ready to shoot them, and I just couldn't do it. I said, I'm done. That's it. I can't do it anymore. So just stop. Now, if it came down to zombie apocalypse and I had to eat,
You
that
had to
kind of
eat
thing,
something.
it's one thing. No problem. I can kill it, dress it, all that stuff. I don't worry about that. But as far as just killing for the sake of killing, I don't enjoy that anymore.
For
So
sport, it just kind of left you. Yeah,
yeah.
I could see that. Now, you've talked about the horses and your dogs,
hmm
and I think backstage you were telling me that you had search otters.
We have two otters that we trained up for to do search work, and they work with our dive team. That's their purpose. And we got into the concept about 2 years ago, I guess it was. I was with my grandkids, and we were at a marine aquarium where they had a big otter display. And we came around to the side, and the trainer who takes care of the otters, she had 4 otters, and she was feeding them, and she had them in 4 different spots. She taught them place, and they had their 4 places, and she was feeding them, and they were all being very well behaved, and they knew their place. And so being an animal trainer, I went over and I started talking to her about how she did it and what method she was using, and she was very gracious to answer all my questions. And so I went back and I talked to her and the training director, because I'd had this idea in Florida. We when we dive looking for remains or victims, or that kind of thing, we were always in dark water, meaning that the water's murky here, and we have tine water and just mucky water, and you can't see this far in front of your face, really. So, when we're down there in the dive gear, and I'm one of the recovery divers, I'm down there on the rope, and I'm following the rope around, and I'm using my hands, and I'm just basically, I can't even see my hand. And I'm just going along here, bumping into alligators and other things, and trying to
Oh,
find these remains, right?
oh, it's
And we've missed
horrifying. Wow.
them at times. We've had a couple misses, and because we just couldn't see what the hell we were doing,
Yeah.
and we tried really hard to keep the grids tight. So we thought, well, is there um, something else we could do? And I'd always heard about otters, and otters have the ability to scent underwater. And I thought, I wonder if that really works or not. So I went to the aquarium and I talked to them about it. I said, can we set up a beta test and try to see if we can train them to, give me a couple otters that I could just do this test to train them up to see if they could find a target odor. And they said, sure, let's give it a shot. So they were very gracious to let me do it. And I went up there every week and worked with them for several months. And sure enough, we had a female otter that was just knocking it out of the park. And we use the Q word Hoffa for human remains. That's after Jimmy Hoffa.
Okay.
And so, because when I started in this back in the 80s, everybody was looking for Jimmy Hoffa
Still
or DB.
looking.
Yeah, Jimmy Hoffa or DB Cooper. Those were the two big
Yeah.
searches that everybody wanted to work on.
Yep.
And
Still.
so I worked with a lot of FBI guys, back in those days working that stuff. And so we used to make a joke out of it. We just say, go find Hoffa, and because if they ever did find him, I'd be on the Geraldo Rivera show and I'd be rich,
Yeah.
So, I mean, that would be it, so.
Yeah, that was a great Geraldo episode when he
Yeah, we've got this safe, and I'm like, oh my God, it was so
yeah, he did a brief stint on local radio here a couple years ago, and I don't think a day went by when the caller didn't remind him of that particular show. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we finally tested it by taking we had 4 containers, little glass containers, and we put them in the tank, and one of them was hot with cadaver in it, and then the other 3 were blanks. And so we put her in the tank, and she was swimming along, and she saw me, and I gave her my nose command, which just means go look for Hoffa. And so I told her to go, and she just went, shh, and boom, she hits the jar right off that we were looking for. No problem whatsoever. And so we moved him around and did it again, and she just was knocking out of the park. I said, okay, well, I guess we answered the question, so.
Wow.
So I was like, well, let's go take it out into the real world and see what they could do. And of course, the aquarium was like, no, you're not taking our otters out of the aquarium.
You can't borrow our otters.
So we had to get our own.
we love your work, Michael, but you cannot take our
yeah,
otters.
you can't have our otters. So I ended up having to go another route and get some two otters for our own purposes. And so after the hurricane, we had to relocate them over to Palm Beach because I can't keep them here until I get the house fixed up enough. But we'll bring them back over here eventually. But I still go over to Palm Beach. We have 2 horse teams. We have one in Palm Beach and we have one here on this coast, on the West Coast. And so the otters are on the other coast right now until we can get them back over here. But they're still there.
So you did get your own otters, and you're still in the process of training those now?
We plan on releasing the program for public consumption, as we call it, in next year, in 24. It's kind of been one of our black bag projects. We've just been keeping it under wraps, just working on it. We had 2 tests of it this last year where I was working on water cases and we had success with them. And I'm like, okay, so now we're ready to go forward and do this. So, because I know we're going to take a lot of heat when we start. So the haters just come out whenever you start something new. And, you know, so I'm like, are we really ready to deal with this yet? You know, and not that we looking for it, but you know it's going to happen because some news crew is going to see them working and they're going to be like, otters, hey, you know, and it's going to be all over everywhere.
I mean,
it's just going to be everywhere.
I think this is going to, I mean, I think you're looking at something to blow up there as far as popularity, because this is the first time people have used otters in this fashion, right? And
yeah, that I know of. I mean, I don't know of anybody else that's done, because I looked around to see if anybody else had some answers on our problem with the dark water, and nobody was looking in this direction at all to do it. So as far as I know, we're the only ones that are out there trying to do it.
That's amazing. Imagine how big it's going to be the first time these otters are successful. Yeah. Cashew says so. It's a David Devine exclusive scoop.
There you go.
Otter.
You got a scoop. Yeah.
We always get one here. That's one of the trademarks. We kind of stumble into exclusives almost every show, and that's a great one. I can't wait to. These otters are going to have their own T-shirt brand, I bet.
Stuffed animals. That's the trick. We'll have
stuffed animal. I could see it now.
Stuffed animal, still stuffed animal otters for Christmas. That's what you
need. Yeah. Put me down for one of those. I'll take one of those.
Yeah, but
time is flying. There's a few. Oh, go ahead.
I was seeing that Noam on here asked if people put in their will to donate their bodies. You can. It is possible to do that. So you can do that. There's a process involved, but mostly they go to the universities. One of the body farms is where they usually go. In Florida, we have 2, which are run by Florida Gulf University. Dr. Heather Walsh-Haney, she runs them, and she takes the bodies there. And then Oak Ridge, Tennessee, they take them up there, and you can leave them, and then we get to go up there and train on them and stuff. So we do eventually get them. I don't store them here. I don't have a facility to store them.
Yeah, I wouldn't think you do. I wouldn't think you do. Your wife might not go along with that.
No. I mean, we get the occasional arm or leg that's in the freezer kind of thing.
Is it? Oh, do you really? Do you really get that?
Jeffrey Dahmer's kitchen. Yeah, when it's open.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right there.
Look at that.
We get issued stuff for educational purposes, and so
I mean, people. If you're having Thanksgiving over there, you have to be careful, right? You have to be careful.
Yeah. Just go in there. There's a leg and 2 frosted beer mugs back in there, But sorry, welcome to my dark humor.
Yeah, I was good, but I was going to ask you as you're saying that. Great answer. Yeah, but you have to have kind of a dark sense of humor, don't you?
It's a protection mechanism.
Yeah,
when you're out here doing this kind of work. So
we've heard of police, tell stories of that too, where just to maybe keep you from going, crazy or insane, that you have to make.
I have a very cold scientific approach. However, and it becomes bad. We have a code word on the team called zebra, and what happened to us a few years ago, we had this case. Suicide, located the young lady who had suicided, and she was badly decomposed by the time we found her. And so we were at a hamburger restaurant, fancy hamburger place, and they serve cheeseburgers and wine. It's very nice.
Oh, sounds good.
we were talking about it, and it was getting loud. Oh well, they wanted this, but her hand had fallen off, and we had to pick it up, move it over here, and we were talking about what was happening, not realizing our voices were
Right. Right.
going all around the restaurant, and the people next to us are actually staring at us with this mortified look on their face, you know. And
Yeah. Yeah.
one of the girls noticed, and she's going, "Cut it, cut it, cut it." And we were like, "Oh my God," didn't realize, that our voices were carrying like that. And so now we have a code word, zebra. And if things are getting a little out of hand and we're in public, one of them will go, "Zebra, zebra,
Zebra.
zebra." And that
That
means cut it off.
everybody
That's
can hear us. Zebra. I'm starting to
right.
learn these code words. We've
Shut it
learned a
off.
couple. Yeah. Zebra. We'll have to remember that and use it here. A lot of zebra
But
moments here. We'll have to. Yeah. We'll have zebra. I
but
like that one. So we
yeah,
got zebra. We got Hoffa. But Mike
yeah,
Jones says, "What a great way to raise money for the cost. The stuffed animal otters.
yeah.
I'm guessing would be great." Yeah. I said,
Well,
"Put
that
me
was
one.
kind of, we were talking
Put
about
that."
our YouTube channel, and we don't really do content, but we thought, maybe we'll release some content like that on the YouTube channel and start, doing that. Because someone asked about Adventures with Purpose. Do we find cars? We do run into cars. Um, uh, it's just part of the job, and we have a standing order. We have a very high resolution sonar system on our boats, and if we're out doing water search and we run across the car, we always tag its location. If the dog's alerting on it when we're over that way, then we're like, okay, we really need to look at this car. But we tag them all their locations. We turn them into law enforcement so they can go get them with their dive team later on if they want to. We don't have to necessarily pull them all out of there because they have a team that can do that. So in Florida, pretty much all the law enforcement agencies here have their own dive team that's qualified to do that. So we just turn the information in, and they take it from there. Adventures of Purpose, I like their mission. I like what they do. I think they're serving a niche that needs to be done. I mean, finding people in cars is really pretty easy in our world. What we do with having to find clandestine graves and stuff like that, that's hard. This is what we do is really hard. But I love the challenge of it. But
Yeah.
but it's always been a dance with us on whether to put Peace River out there in the social media realm and live with all that goes on. Because like we were talking off air beforehand, what happened to us with the Dog the Bounty Hunter search, with the Landry search, the Gabby Petito thing,
Right.
it went really south, and we were getting death threats and people calling up saying, "We have a right to know, what happened." And I'd be like, "You don't have a right to know anything. So just, unfortunately, you don't have a right to know." And that doesn't go over well for social media because everybody wants to know what's
Yeah.
going on. And
And in that case, yeah, there's these different questions that I had. But we were talking about that backstage, and that case just blew up. Then social media was all over that. And how much does that get? Obviously, in the way of what you guys are trying to do.
yeah,
And,
it gets crazy.
and
Yeah,
again, like we were talking about, some of these things should be kept private so the family knows.
yeah.
Right.
Well, we're going through this stuff where these high profile cases. Uh, we're getting threatened, but that's nothing compared to like what the families are going through. They're getting it on steroids.
Yeah.
People harassing the heck out of them and bothering them. And con artists come in. Con artists come in and say, "Oh, we'll help you," or they try to get money out of these people. And then other people call up and say, "Hey, I know where your kid is. If you give me $10,000, I'll tell you where he is." And that kind of stuff goes on. And this is what goes on with the families. And they just take a beating emotionally with these kinds of things. So I'm very protective of the families because it's not fair to them. They're already going through hell. They don't need more. They
Right.
don't need more. And I try not to. I don't want to bring more pain on them than they're already suffering at this point. So we're very careful about how we do our social media and stuff when we work these kids. Most of the time, they don't even know about it. They don't even know we were there. We get there, we're done. We do the recovery, we're out of there. Nobody even knows we were there. And then later on, you'll hear a report, a news report comes out and says, "Well, the family was recovered at this time and Peace River helped them do it." And those types of things we will republish on our social media just so people know that we know about it, that we know that the news article was released. But we don't go out and knock on doors and try to get news articles and stuff. That's not what we do here at all. It's just we're out there all the time, so eventually we're going to bump into a news crew.
Right.
It's going to
Yeah.
happen, So.
Right. Yeah, in that particular case, when dog came in, I mean, I imagine it brought a lot more light into it, which potentially, I guess it could help, but also probably brought some challenges with it too.
Yeah, well, dog, he's very good at what he does. People pick on him all the time, but he's very good at his at finding things and finding people. And he wasn't bounty hunting. I heard some people make comments about when he was on the Landry thing, the Landry case, and that he was bounty hunting. And no, he wasn't. He was just another searcher looking for Brian. And he lives. Dog lives down in Southwest Florida, so he knew about the case, and he came up and he had some ideas about trying to locate Brian and trying to help with his celebrity to see if he could bring some help to get this thing done. So he called me and asked me if I'd help him on the Fort DeSoto search, and I said, yeah, we'll go up and help out because we weren't doing anything at the moment. And so we went up and worked that for 3 days, searching all the little islands out there because they'd had several leads with Brian that they had seen someone matching his description running around in a yellow kayak between the islands, and there's a lot of parked boats out there, and he could easily be living on one of those out there. So that all had to be checked. And so we spent 3 days out there doing it. We did actually find the guy who kind of looks like Brian in the yellow kayak.
Oh, really?
We
Oh,
actually
really?
found him, and it wasn't Brian. So
Oh, wow. I don't know if I caught that on
so
the news where
yeah.
so the
So
tip was
we were
the wrong guy, huh?
it was just it was a guy who looked like Brian, and but it wasn't Brian.
Oh, wow.
So so that that all came to an end, and then we went back home. However, we started getting a lot of death threats and stuff from people. How they either didn't like dog, or they didn't like the fact that we were helping dog, or they didn't like the whole case altogether. And we started getting a ton of threatening stuff. And so we ended up having to change our phone numbers and the whole 9 yards. And,
Wow, really? Really?
yeah,
Just
because
from
it got so out of control. And we were very worried. Our we had people who were out doing searches and working, and we were we started carrying our guns with us because we were worried that something was going to happen. So it got serious for a while. It was kind of a wake-up call for us. And we've done high-profile cases before. We did Austin Perry, 2 boys that lost off the coast. We worked that thing for 3 weeks until we got that resolved, and then we worked for Tigerking. We worked on the Tigerking searches for about a year on and off, and that was kind of one that we kind of got famous with. We were talking about Nancy Grace and some of these other things that
Yeah.
I help out with, and that's kind of where all that started. But
Well, I'm glad you brought those two up because we don't have a lot of time. We only have a few more minutes, but yeah, I wanted to talk about both those things that you were involved with. Nancy Grace, awesome. Bombshell. He worked with Nancy Grace.
Yeah, and well, I'm a commenter on her podcast that she has going, which is on YouTube now too. And so whenever there's a search and there's some search related stuff on there, she'll have me on and talk about it, which is really a blessing. She's actually a really nice lady. I mean, she comes off like she's tough as nails, and she can be, but she's really a real sweetheart. And she's a mom, and she has 2 kids, and she does what she's got to do. So nice lady.
I was saying, I don't know, again, you're busy working, and I lost track of her, but again, tell her hi for me because I used to watch her every night. That was like quiet time. Quiet time was watching Nancy Grace for 1 hour. Yeah.
Yeah. She's into it now. She's really gotten into the true crime thing. So I had my first experience with Crime Con, which is they have these conventions for true crime people. I don't know if you've ever heard about Crime Con or not, but it's they just had one in Orlando here about a month or so ago, which is the first one I've ever been to one, and just to see what it was all about. So now I've got wrangled. They're doing the next one in Nashville, so I've got wrangled into going up there to put up a booth and do all this stuff at the next one. So we'll be up there for CrimeCon in Nashville next year. But
Oh, wow.
it's
Yeah.
something I never knew there was this whole true crime community thing out
Oh,
there. I had no
yeah.
idea that this was all going on. So it's
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
It's its own category.
yeah, and I
And
had no idea that people knew who we were, which is a shock because we walked into CrimeCon. It was me and I had Dama with me, and these people were coming and go, "Is that Dama?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She's, "That's the dog from Tiger King." I'm like, "Yeah," and I'm like,
yeah.
"How did they know this?"
Yeah. Well,
And
that, I
she's
mean,
getting her picture. She must have been the most selfie dog I ever saw. I mean, everyone's, "Hey, look at what Dama," you know. It's
Dame
like,
is
oh my
famous
god,
was,
yeah,
I mean, that was pretty, I mean, that captivated everything for a year at least, right? The Tiger King thing. The
yeah.
Tiger King thing was king for sure.
Yeah, and Tiger King, it hit at the right time. It hit at COVID,
Right.
and
Right.
everybody was home, and the world became aware of binge watching, you know, and people would just binge watch Netflix
Right.
and watch 20 episodes in a row or whatever, you know, and so you know,
Right.
people always
Yeah.
said, "Well, how'd you end up on Netflix?" And I'm like, "Well, we answered the phone. I mean,
Oh,
basically, my phone rang,
yeah.
and I picked it up, and it was the vice president of Netflix, and she said, we've got a search that we're working on up in Plant City area. Would you be interested in working? It's a water. We need a boat. We need divers, and we need dogs that can work on the water." I said, "Yeah, we got all that. We can help you out with that." So we did it, and had no idea. I didn't even know what Tiger King was at the time. I had no idea what it
Yeah.
was all about, and
Yeah.
so we kind of just got schnockered into that one. And then the next thing I know, we did that, and then there was another show that came out for Investigative Discovery came out, and they wanted us to do another Tiger King search, so we did that one. And then Nancy Grace had one that she did, and that's how I met her and or you know, met her productions crew. She wasn't there, but the production crew was there, and then did that. So we've always been. Uh, yeah, I'm not afraid. One of the things about me is that I'm not afraid to demonstrate my dogs. People will come up and they'll say, "Well, does your dog work on animal bones?" I'll say, "Well, let's throw some animal bones out there, and let's throw some human bones out there, and let's see what happens." You know, my dogs walk right past the animal bones, go over and alert on the human bones. Why? Because humans don't smell like animals. Two different odors. So the dogs won't alert on them, and I'll do it right on TV because I don't care. It's what they do. You know,
Right.
I mean, I've never had a problem with that. So there are people out there like, "Oh no, you should never show that on TV." Well, why? Why should I not show it on TV? You know, what's the problem with that? People should know. You know, people really don't know how cadaver dogs work, and they still don't even to this day. And I've always kind of been on a quest to educate people on how they work and how they function. They're very valuable tools if they're used properly. And there's a lot of improper usage of cadaver dogs in the world, and unfortunately, but if you use them correctly, they're great things to have.
What would be someone's reason for not wanting that the public to see that on TV?
Usually when I get pushback, it's usually from law enforcement communities like, "Hey, we don't want that information out there. The bad guys are going to know." And I'm like, the bad guys already know.
Right.
I mean, I hate to burst your bubble, but they already know.
Right.
Especially if they've gone to prison. It
Right.
amazes me when they go to prison how smart they become.
Yeah.
And we always see trends that happen. Like the latest trend has been they don't, when they murder a fellow drug pusher or something, they don't dump the bodies. They used to dump the bodies out or do shallow graves or something. They don't do that anymore. Now they fold them in half. They buy one of those freezers from Sears, and they stick them in the garage and they freeze them there for a while. And you know, that's the new thing. And so where'd they learn that? Oh, they were in prison and they all figured it out. So you know, that's the new thing that goes along. And unfortunately, it's just part of the business of doing this stuff. But I don't have a problem with that. Trying to educate the public. I think the more people understand how it works, the better it'll be for everybody in the long run. Yeah,
Amazing.
the mafia having an anti-cadaver unit. Believe me, they've tried. Yeah, they've tried that. Um, Tried to do that, but the dogs are amazing. They seem to get through all the distractors and they still find them. You know, um, we one of the tricks that we saw starting to come back with speaking about the mafia was the old cemetery trick. And the cemetery trick is where they've murdered somebody and they want to dispose of the body, so they go up by a cemetery and they see where they've already dug the grave shaft because the coffin's going to go in the next day.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so they'll go there and they will, during the night, they will dig out in that shaft deeper and they'll put the body in there and they'll bury it, and then the casket comes down on top of it. And so nobody ever knows that there's a body down there, right?
Wow.
However, the problem is that the dogs can smell the body that's down there. And so a body that's been embalmed and put in the casket has no odor to it. It doesn't decompose, so it doesn't smell for a while anyway. Um, but the body underneath the casket does smell. So the trick doesn't work because
That
the dogs will find them.
that's
So.
just that's crazy. Something you just don't think. You don't think like not to say I'm not normal, that's for sure, but that's just something I would never think of. You know.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
I guess that grows out of necessity if you really need to hide something.
Yeah.
And but
Yeah.
I haven't
Um,
had that necessity.
when
But yeah,
when
that's
we
wild. That's crazy. But the
yeah
dogs
we
can still smell them through the
oh yeah.
casket. Yeah, and underneath
We've
there.
had dogs locate them that way. We've on the archaeological side of it, we've had dogs that have located Paleo-Indian graves back as far as 5,000 years, some 10 and 12,000-year-old grave sites. So
Wh-
um, if
What
the if, if the
what were they?
bacteria that's down there is still generating odor, the dogs will find it. So
That's crazy. And it really the bacteria is still generating odor after all
it
those
can
years.
be, yeah,
After that
depending on
long.
the soil and the conditions that are going on down there. Yeah,
And
they could do it.
what would a purpose real quick, this would be my last question. I
Yeah,
really want to thank you for being here. You got to come back because I have a billion other questions. But
sure.
here's a lot. But what was the reason for that particular work for finding those? Was it to relocate them then once you found them?
For the Indian graves,
Yeah.
generally that's for historical. They mark them off so that they're not disturbed.
Okay.
And so that's basically what that boils down to. It's the same thing with um, when I was talking about the Seminole Indian War graves
Yeah.
up in Georgia, when they're going to be renovating the area, they're putting in some historical markers where the old fort was and all this stuff, and they don't want to disturb the graves that are there, so we want to mark them off so that people know where they are, so they can, not, give them the respect that they deserve. And
Did, yeah, I said one more question. I lied. But
yeah,
do they have any record? Have they kept any record of that? Maybe location, but of people that are there,
you mean
or
like in the fort or the old Seminole stuff? There's usually
yeah,
records. Yeah, there's usually records of where they
are
don't
there
say
really?
where they're at, but they have a listing of the dead that died there. So we know that they're out there. We just don't know who's who in the process because they're not marked. The graves weren't. In this particular case, the graves were not marked. They had a bout of malaria that went through there, and people were dying left and right. So they were just taking them out in the back and burying them. And so, and then the fort eventually was abandoned, and so they were never properly marked or anything. And so now, as things develop around this area, they want to make sure that they're not disturbed. So we have to mark. We have to figure out where they're at. So,
Wow.
and that was that work, which I enjoy that work. I enjoy the historical archaeological work a lot more than doing the law enforcement work
Well,
because
yeah. I mean,
there's no pressure and it's all. And I'm a history buff, and so
yeah,
I'm just fascinated by the whole thing when I'm out there. So
yeah. Same here. I would think that that would be rewarding. Again, because I would think it has a positive outcome in that where
yeah.
you're finding them repurposing either a grave or marking the grave of
Yeah.
the people that have been there.
Well, we try to show, as a historical grave, even for a normal grave, you always want to show respect for them. They deserve their respect and the homage that they deserve. So, any of them, and that goes to my social media thing about posting search results without, the family being notified and the proper procedures being done the way it should be done. We have a dead person here, a person whose life was taken, and we need to give them the respect and the compassion that we can to handle this thing properly for them, and make sure that the family's notified properly, that everything's done well out of respect for them. And for some reason that's going away, and I think social media has stripped a lot of that. Like I said, and it's about getting it out there fast and getting that soundbite out there, and being the first one. It's not about what's right or wrong anymore, and we really have to take a step back and think about that. What are we doing?
Is it because on screens people don't seem real?
That could be it. Maybe they're more detached. They don't feel it, the way that, those of us who are on the ground who are there doing this, I mean, I've had a lot of crying mothers on my shoulders when we find their missing loved one. It changes you. It's different because you see the pain that they're going through, and it's a much different perspective that I have compared to the people, that are watching it on social media. So
yeah, I think that if people did see that, they would hopefully show a little more patience and respect to the timing of when things are released.
Well, and I agree. I mean, to me, it's always, what's the difference? Wait, if it happens now or it happens a week from now.
Right.
As far as the social media part of it doesn't make any difference to them. They're going to find out about it eventually. But to the family, and to give them a chance to get themselves together, it makes a big difference to them. And that's what we need to be concerned about. Take care of that, and then the social media things will happen and all that stuff. Let that go on. So
amazing. Well, speaking of big difference, it seems like, Michael, you make a big difference. This has been an awesome show. Just completely fascinating stuff. Thank you, viewers, for watching. And I do
thanks for the great questions. There's a lot of great questions in here.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely great questions. And thanks for the scoop on the otters. And we'll be looking for those stuffed otters around Christmas time. But definitely go to Peace River K-9 Search and Rescue.org and see how you can help, or just check it out, the interesting work. And then on YouTube, we were talking, Michael's going to start building up this YouTube channel, and it's PRSAR.org. But it's at Peace River K-9 on YouTube, and the links are in the description. So go on over and give Michael some likes and follow. And thank you very much, Michael, for being here.
Thanks, everybody. It's been fun. I hope it was entertaining and you learned something. So anyway, I'm always answering questions. You can always email me. I'm glad to answer when I can. So
email them. And again, the links are in the description. PRSAR.org and at Peace River K-9 on YouTube. Michael, welcome, or come back anytime. Thank you very much for the awesome stories. And again, I appreciate it. And we will catch you next time on David Devine Broadcast.
All righty.